Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Wednesday, November 26, 2014, and here are our top stories.
Tonight, as chaos engulfs Ferguson, the establishment media attempts to direct the spirit of the nation into a destructive revolution. Meanwhile, Obamacare is now offering $3,000 in incentives to hire illegals over native-born Americans. All that plus much more up next on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
Just as we were gaining ground and exposing the national epidemic of the excessive use of force by the police and showing that its origins were really coming from the federal government, the establishment has seized on the opportunity in Ferguson, an opportunity of ambiguity in this particular case. There were so many that were clear-cut, yet they've seized on this opportunity to turn our attention from that excessive use of force onto racial division. And so we see these stories from Infowars.com. Ferguson riots and immigration reform are framing the coming civil war around terms of race. And that's not our terms. That is the term of a retired general who went on CNN and said, you know what happens if we can't control them? We're going to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807, which of course would countermand the Posse Comitatus law saying the military cannot intervene. This is where they want to go. This is why they have deliberately provoked the people both on the streets and in the courts to reaffirm their concern, their grievances that the system was against them. At the same time, the rest of the community was lulled into a false sense of security with the promise of National Guard being there to stand things down. The National Guard then was removed and the angry crowd was allowed to go through and burn the small businesses in that area. This is where we're headed. But this is a national problem. As that general pointed out, we see from CNN, protesters are filling streets across the country as the Ferguson protests are spreading coast to coast. In Atlanta, New York, LA, Minneapolis, Oakland, many different areas, there are people who are taking to the streets, and possibly they will provoke this if they continue to make this about race. We've even seen a state senator in Missouri say, this is our race war. We hadn't had one yet to fix the racial divisions, so this race war is going to fix our racial divisions. It's not going to solve anything. It's going to leave you with even more excessive force on the streets than you've seen before. But now what is all this pushing off of the front page? Of course, it's pushing off Obama's amnesty rulings, his Obama law. And there's a tie there with Obamacare. Now, he made the admission, an amazing admission, as he was being heckled. He says, wait a minute, you're angry with me because I didn't do enough. I changed the law. Think about that for a second. The president says, I changed the law. You understand clearly that the president does not have the constitutional authority to do that. Yet another example, yet another clear confession of why he should be impeached. He said on at least 22 occasions, I'd like to change things for you, but I don't have that power. I'm not a dictator. Now he's saying, I changed the law. And he said he's going to change a lot of other laws as he sees fit to do in these next 2 years. We're going to see a lot of this if the Republicans will not stand up to him. And of course, the Republican leadership is egging him on. They want him to do this because they want the power when they seize government. But look at the implications of this. We see a story from Yahoo News saying that applications for U.S. jobless aid have jumped to 313,000. Now, that is only new unemployment claims. That is not people who have been unemployed for quite some time. They're dropped off of the statistics. These are just the newly unemployed. And as they point out in understatement, they say the increase is likely to raise concerns about the broader health of the job market. No doubt. And guess who is taking the brunt of this? Of course, it is the poor, the working poor, the blue-class workers, those people who supported Obama. Those people are now being stabbed in the back, as we reported before. Of the 6 million people that it's eventually going to give amnesty to at least, and we don't know exactly what that number is. That's according to the 2010 census. We know that wasn't 100% accurate. But if it is only 6 million people at this time that are given amnesty, that is all the jobs that have been created since 2008. But it gets even worse. Look at this article from Washington Times. Obamacare offers firms a $3,000 incentive to hire illegals over native-born workers. Under the president's new amnesty, businesses will have a $3,000 per employee incentive to hire illegal immigrants over native-born workers because of a quirk of Obamacare. Under Obamacare, businesses that hire illegal aliens or people who've been given amnesty and not citizens won't have to pay a penalty for not providing health care coverage. That means that they're going to be $3,000 more attractive than a similar American citizen who they would hire. Now, this loophole has been confirmed by congressional aides. Now, it's not just that loophole. It's not just a $3,000 incentive. There's also an incentive for employers to hire people they don't have to pay Social Security wages on. In other words, illegal aliens working in this country. Now, to give you an idea of what this is, and of course, that 7.62% of their salary that the employer pays in, you will not see on your pay stub. If they're not paying a Social Security contribution, somebody making minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, that would save them $1,000 per employee per year. If you look at the minimum wage in, let's say, Washington State, where it's $9.32, that would save them about $1,400 per employee. So now you're looking at $3,000 to $4,500 incentive to hire somebody who is not an American citizen. That's the way this is working. Now, it's not just the Obamacare issue. It's not just amnesty. It's not just Obama law, where he changes the law arbitrarily as he wishes. Of course, there's the other thing there that Nixon got impeached for, and that is using the IRS against his own political enemies. In some new revelations this week, we see that 2,500 new documents reveal that the White House was getting fed information from the IRS about taxpayers, presumably his political opponents. This is a discovery process. It was revealed to a group, Cause of Action, that is sued for access to the documents. It charges that the IRS and the White House have harassed taxpayers, and in an email from the Justice Department, they actually said they weren't going to be able to meet the timeline to provide the requested information as part of the lawsuit because they found so many documents. It's going to take them an extra 2 weeks to deal with this. This is a massive amount of information, 2,500 documents showing that taxpayer information held by the IRS was being shared with Obama's White House. We also know that Obama is pushing, of course, World War III and secretly, a new trade agreement, which Republicans have signaled they approve of. And that, of course, are there's two of them, actually, the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Partnership. In the Transatlantic Partnership, the New American reports that the globalists who want to push this through secretly, elevating corporations to the level of sovereign states and doing many other things, of course, as we've talked about many times, the globalists are using Putin as a foil to push the U.S.-EU merger. Now, of course, the way this is going to work is that they create free trade zones, as they say. We'll talk about that in just a moment. They want to create free trade zones, and then after they create regional governments, then they start to merge these regional governments. Now, the New American points out that a problem for the choir of people promoting the TTIP is that Putin is on record as favoring Russia's eventual convergence with the EU. And so what this really is a regionalist strategy that's being promoted, as they point out, by Kissinger, by Brzezinski, and by the globalists. But I want to read you one last quote from this article, and this comes from the people who are promoting it. They say that this trade agreement is a big basket of agreed-upon rules and regulations that would make the U.S. and much of Europe a free trade zone. You don't get free trade by having a big basket of regulations. What you wind up with is control of your economy by some multinational corporations to their advantage, and with a globalist convergence based on those trade agreements. Now, one more thing that's been pushed off the headlines by the Ferguson riots, and that, of course, is Ebola, and what the end game is on that. Just as we see with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, we see corporations moving things in their own direction. I believe, and we've pointed out many times, a large part of what is happening with Ebola, and we see the same type of thing with Ebola, a passive stand down in terms of inviting in the disease, just as they invited people to get angry about the abuse from the government and spinning it in a different direction. They want to bring Ebola into this country so they can hammer us with a medical tyranny. Part of that is going to be the vaccines that fall out of this. Merck partners now with a small company, Newlink, to speed up work on an Ebola vaccine. And the way the NPR reports this, they're talking about how it used to be David versus Goliath. Now it's Goliath versus Goliath, because prior to this, the small company Neuralink was going up against GlaxoSmithKline. Now Neuralink has been purchased by Merck. So now you're going to have two giant pharmaceuticals battling with each other to come up with an Ebola vaccine. They point out that Neuralink was funded, of course, by the Canadian government and the U.S. Defense Department. One last thing here, and they say that what it consists of is a vaccine coming from a harmless virus that's been genetically engineered to incorporate little bits of Ebola. Nothing to worry about with that, right? What could possibly go wrong if they genetically engineer that? So they finished the article by saying health officials say an effective vaccine could help to slow the spread of Ebola, but the epidemic will only end through old-fashioned public health measures, identifying and isolating everyone who is infected with the virus. You understand? It's the quarantine. It's controlling the borders. It's what they're not doing because they want the virus to spread so they can force their vaccine on us for profit and, who knows, whatever else they may put into that vaccine, that virus, with their little bits of genetic engineering. Now, stay with us. Right after the break, we have another special report from John Bound on what's going on in Ferguson and some background information on that. Stay with us.
The average person's life is filled with unexpected challenges. Unlock the energy it takes to defeat these daily beasts with super male or super female vitality, specifically designed to assist the body in regulating proper hormone balance to create superior vitality in males and females. Supercharge and conquer your world at InfoWarsLife.com or call 1-888-253-3139.
Introducing the first proprietary oxygen-based intestinal cleanser, OxyPowder, backed by FDA-approved phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials. All the toxins from the air, the food, the water ultimately ends up in the gut or affects the gut. Take your health into your own hands and start cleansing your body today with OxyPowder. Secure your OxyPowder today at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com.
Internment resettlement operations, we broke this a couple years ago when it was sent to us by military sources. After that happened, they posted an Army.mil kind of, oh, it's no big deal. See, you got a secret document? We'll just put it out. No big deal. Like catching your neighbor walking out with your television and they claim they were taking it to have it repaired or something. Oh, it's no big deal, Bob. Or you catch your neighbor in bed with your wife. Oh, I was just, doing a gynecology exam. They released FM 3-39.40. And this document says Social Security numbers, how to round up the American people. We have articles on Infowars.com about it where you can see the subsections where more than 20 times it says American citizens, Social Security numbers, how to process, how to get our biometrics, just like we were citizens of Fallujah, Iraq. It goes through all of it. And first they tried to deny it, then they admitted it.
Don't rush, police! Get your ass from over here! I'm leaving. Get the fuck from over here! Now!
Who are you with? Where are you from? Are you from Ferguson? You're from? Are you even from this area? Where are you from?
He was hired by police! He was hired by police! Where you from?
No, I was not hired by the police.
He's hired by police! What the fuck are you doing?
It's about the feds. Were you hired by the feds by any chance?
No, we asked you, listen, we asked you to leave. I'll tell him about it. Let him go. Let him go. Stop walking with the people and walk away. Go. Please, go. What they gonna hurt you.
We just got news of a state of emergency. This is Executive Order 1414 signed by Governor Nixon, and it says, Governor Nixon of the state of Missouri, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution, and it says, I hereby declare a state of emergency exists in the state of Missouri.
Well, about the gun sales in the area, they've gone up about 300%. Do you think the fact that, people being allowed to have the Second Amendment, is that going to affect the looting in any kind of way, you think?
That's really hard saying. I mean, the looting, if the people are looting, they're obviously criminals, and obviously, guns fall in the hands of criminals oftentimes anyway, but the